Hello everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Today on Beading 101, we're going to talk about different stringing materials for beads. And we're talking about cording and a little bit about wire. And this is by no means the definitive video on any of this, but it's just a basic overview, especially for beginners, about what you should be looking for stringing materials when you're getting started. So let's talk about your basic beading wire. Which is great for making bracelets and for necklaces. So there's a couple different brands out there. I've gotten AccuFlex and Beadalon, and you can get them at your craft store, like Michael's or Walmart, or even online. So when you're looking at wire, there's a couple different things on the packages that you're going to see, and they mean different things and are going to make a difference about how flexible your wire is and how heavy a bead it can hold. So first of all, you're going to be looking at, it's going to say the number of strands involved in the wire. Now, the wire itself looks like single strand, and the camera's not going to pick this up too well, but you might make out that there's a little bit of texture to this wire, and it's actually several strands, in this case 7 strands of wire woven together and to make a single strand of this wire. But it's 7 strands. I have another one by Beadalon, which is 19 strands. And I've seen others out there that are also 49 strands of wire woven together to make your beading wire. And the strands matter because the higher the number, the more flexible and drapey the wire is going to be. So less strands means that it's going to be less flexible, and more strands means that it's going to be more flexible. The other numbers that you're going to be looking at on the package are going to be the diameter of the wire, how thick the wire is. So in both my 7 strand and my 19 strand, it's actually just about the same in diameter, about 48 millimeters and 46.46, so I'm sorry, about 0.48 millimeters in the AccuFlex 7 strand and 0.46 millimeters in the 19 strand. So they're about the same size and diameter. But I have another roll of wire over here, and it is 0.76 millimeters. You can see it's much, much thicker. And this is a 49 strand. This is also a 49 strand beading wire. So I might use something like this, especially a thicker diameter wire, if I'm using chunkier beads, because it's going to carry the weight a lot better than I would with a thinner strand bead. Something like this would be great if I'm doing a lot with seed beads, either a single strand necklace or if I were to do a multi-strand necklace. It's especially the 11-0 seed beads. They're very small beads, and so they'd slide right onto this wire. Very nice, and the wires will twist well as a multi-strand. I may also want to, if I'm working with more delicate beads, I may also want a smaller diameter wire, but I may want something closer to a 19 strand or more for the flexibility with the seed beads. I don't want the wire itself to be too stiff because I do want those delicate beads to drape nicely. And then finally, the last number that we look at on these packages are the number of feet of wire that you get, and that you're gonna look based on. You're gonna decide if it's a good buy based on price and things like that. Usually, you get about 30 feet to a package like this, and again, most of these were bought out of a craft store. And when I can, I always try to go for the sales on this because, I mean, it's not horribly expensive, but it still adds up. So I always try to get these standard supplies like this whenever I can on sale. And you can get it in different colors. I tend to go with just kind of your basic stainless steel color. I don't get overly creative with my beading wire, but they do have it in more of a gold color and stuff like that. So depending on what you're working on, and a lot of the times this is going to get hidden anyway by your bead. But the time that wire color might matter most is when you're working with translucent beads. And so that's where you may want to become a little more discerning about what color wire you end up getting, depending on what kind of beads that you're working with, because obviously with translucent beads, then the wire is going to show through. And I've talked about this a little bit in past videos, but the other type of cording that works really well, particularly for bracelets, is stretch cord. It has a little bit of elasticity to it. And again, you're not measuring it in the number of strands, but the diameters matter. So this particular one is a 1 millimeter diameter. I also have 0.5 millimeter and 0.7 millimeter. I don't do a lot with the 0.5 millimeter because I feel that that's a little too thin after having worked with it, and I'm concerned about the cord snapping with too much pressure. Though it does work very nicely with small 11/0 and probably even 15/0 seed beads if I worked with seed beads that small. The smallest I've worked with is 11/0. But for the smaller seed beads, 1 millimeter does not work with 11/0 seed beads. The 1 millimeter is good for larger beads. And you know, about 4 millimeters, I'd say 4 to 8 millimeters in diameter for a bead. It can handle the weight better just because of its diameter. And if I'm going to work with smaller beads like the 11/0 seed beads, then I like the 0.7 millimeter for the stretch cord because the beads actually do fit on 0.7. And then if I turn my attention over here to wire, and right now we're looking at gold wire, but I have, again, silver color wire, and I have some copper wire as well. And there's a bunch of other different types of wire that you can get based on price and interest. And the important thing to keep in mind with the wire, first of all, is the gauge, because gauge is going to matter depending on what you're using it for. If you want to just be able to do really basic stuff, like make your own jump rings. That's a video that I'll be making soon to show you how to do that. But if you want to make jump rings, you want to use either a 20 gauge or 18 gauge or something like a 16 gauge. And you'll notice with the gauges, as the numbers go up, the diameter gets smaller. So you're going to notice that the 16 gauge wire is much thicker and little bit more difficult to work with in terms of bending and everything like that, but it makes it sturdier. And the lower then as you get to a higher number, like this is my 20 gauge, the wire becomes a little more flexible as the diameter decreases. And this is my 22 gauge gold wire, which is even a little bit more flexible than my 20 gauge. And then when you start getting to 24, 26, and 28 gauge, you're dealing with some very, very thin wire. Let me just pull out some of this here. So then as you start getting to numbers like 26 gauge and 28 gauge, you'll see this is my 26 gauge gold wire. Very, very thin in diameter, very flexible, and so long as you're getting dead soft rather than a hardened wire, this 26 or 28 gauge wire can work very well for bead weaving applications. If you just Google bead weaving, I'm sorry, not bead weaving, yes, bead weaving and wire weaving. If you Google bead weaving or wire weaving applications, you'll see some really stunning things that can be done with wire if you get into that aspect of jewelry making. So I do a little bit with wire weaving. I've gotten a lot. These came mostly from Michaels, but especially for my copper, because I didn't want coated copper, which you know, I wanted to go with pure raw copper. And I wanted to make sure specifically that it was dead soft, and I'm not entirely sure that the stuff I got out of Michael's is dead soft. Sometimes it says it explicitly and sometimes it doesn't. So I wanted dead soft copper wire, and I ended up ordering from Rio Grande to get a couple different gauges in dead soft copper wire, because wire weaving is something I've been a beader for a number of years. But I just started getting interested in doing wire weaving projects, so I wanted to make sure I had plenty of the right stuff to work with on that. So I went to Rio Grande and got a really good price on the dead soft copper wire in several different gauges. 28 gauge and 24 gauge and then 20 gauge, and usually the 20 gauge, because it's more sturdy, 20 gauge and up, I use as base wires, and then I weave with the higher gauge numbers. Because wire, as you work with it and bend it, it becomes hardened, and that's where wire can snap. So starting out with a dead soft, it's not hardened. It will become harder as you work with it. But it gives you a little, it literally gives you some flexibility to work with the wire if you start with dead soft wire rather than starting with hard wire. Hard wire is fine if you were going to do something like create jump rings, where you're really not going to be doing a lot of repetitive bending of the wire and manipulation. So they work well for that, or if you want to create you know, bases for stringing things for earrings and stuff like that. That's where hard wire is probably comes in nice for something like that. So that is a basic overview of actual stringing material to use. Again, not an exhaustive video, but I hope this gives you a basic understanding of what to look for when you're in the store looking for things to string with. There's other type of stringing materials out there that's more suited to bead weaving. When you're working with, you know, when you're working with some of the delicate beads and stuff like that. That's something I'm hoping to get into at some point down the road, but not there yet. So I'm actually going to be doing a search of my own, and have been looking at a lot of different tutorials myself on how to do actual bead weaving. But this, if you're just starting out for if you're just starting out with beading and you want to learn your basic stringing, then these are the kinds of things that you want to be looking for. If you really want to have some wire and learn some basic wire techniques for making your own jump rings and even making some of your own head pins for earrings, then this is the type of wire that you want to go after for that. But quite honestly, your best bet getting started is to focus more on the stringing materials for basic beading, and then go to the findings section and look for your own jump rings in the sizes that you need. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's already created, and it's very cost effective to get, just to get you started, because learning how to bend wire and get things uniform and things like that is a task into itself, and it's a fun one, but maybe not one that you want to start out with right away. So I hope this helped. Please keep watching the channel. I'll have more videos coming up, and thanks for watching.